Let me tell you about Dennis. He's 58 years old, lives outside Phoenix, Arizona, worked 30 years as a school district administrator. In his late 40s, Dennis did exactly what every financial expert tells you to do. He hired a financial advisor, a nice guy, worked at a big-name firm, had a beautiful office, shook his hand firmly, showed him glossy brochures with charts pointing up and to the right. Dennis trusted him completely. For 12 years, Dennis funneled his retirement savings into whatever this advisor recommended. He never asked hard questions. Why would he? The guy was the expert. Then, at 58, getting ready to actually retire, Dennis decided to get a second opinion before making it official. That second advisor, a fee-only fiduciary this time, pulled up Dennis's account and went quiet for a moment. Then he turned the screen around and said, "Dennis, do you know what you've been paying in fees this whole time?" Dennis didn't. Nobody had ever explained it to him in plain English. Turns out, Dennis had been in a mix of high-commission mutual funds and an annuity product that paid his original advisor a fat upfront commission, and Dennis had been paying combined fees north of 2.5% a year without ever realizing it. Over 12 years, that fee drag had quietly eaten more than $140,000 of what should have been his retirement money. Dennis isn't an idiot. Dennis is a guy who trusted a system that told him to trust it. And here's what should genuinely alarm you. Dennis's story is shockingly common, and it's backed by real numbers, not just internet outrage. A U.S. Senate report prepared by the Office of Senator Elizabeth Warren found that conflicts of interest tied to financial advisor compensation were estimated to drain $17 billion every single year from Americans saving for retirement. Money lost specifically because some advisors were incentivized to put their own paycheck ahead of their client's future. And here's the part most people don't know. That's not ancient history. The SEC's own examination priorities for 2025 and 2026 continue to put a direct spotlight on this exact problem, focusing heavily on fiduciary duty enforcement, conflicts of interest, and whether the advice clients are receiving is genuinely serving their best interest, meaning regulators themselves are still actively worried this is happening to people right now. This video is not about saying every financial advisor is bad. Some of the most important relationships you'll ever have with your money will be with a great advisor. This video is about making sure you're never the person who finds out 12 years too late, like Dennis did, that the man with the nice office was being paid more when you made the wrong decision. Let's get into exactly how this happens and how you protect yourself from it. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to Dollar Neck Finance, the channel where we break down the real money systems most people never get explained to them in plain English. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now, because every week we dig into exactly this kind of stuff, the things that quietly cost everyday Americans real money. And if you're already part of the family, drop a comment below. Have you ever actually asked your advisor exactly how they get paid? Let's get into it. So let's talk about how this actually works, because the system isn't some shadowy conspiracy, it's just a structure most people never get explained clearly. And that confusion is exactly what allows the problem to persist. There are three basic ways a financial advisor can get paid, and the difference between them matters enormously. The first is commission-based. A commission is generally a one-time, upfront payment a financial firm makes to an advisor for selling a specific product, like an annuity or life insurance policy. Here's the problem with that structure in plain terms. An advisor may be tempted to recommend a mediocre financial product that pays them a higher commission rather than a better product that pays them less. It's not always malicious. It's human nature. If you got paid more every time you recommended option A over option B, even subconsciously, your brain starts favoring option A. The second structure is fee-based, which sounds safer but can be sneaky. A fee-based advisor charges you a direct fee, but can also still earn third-party commissions on top of that fee. often because they're duly registered as both an advisor and a broker-dealer or insurance agent, letting them sell affiliated products for extra compensation. This is exactly the structure that caught Dennis. He thought he was paying one transparent fee. He didn't realize there was a second layer of compensation baked into the products themselves. The third structure is fee only, and this is the one financial educators consistently point to as having the least built-in conflict. A fee-only advisor doesn't earn any commissions from investments at all, which means they face the fewest conflicts of interest when offering advice. Now here's where it gets even more important. There's a legal distinction most Americans have never even heard of, and it might be the single most important sentence in this entire video. Fee-only advisors are bound by fiduciary duty, meaning they are legally required to put your best interest ahead of their own. Commission-based advisors, on the other hand, only have to meet something called regulation best interest, and under that standard, they must act in your best interest when making a recommendation, but they are not required to continuously monitor your account or avoid all conflicts. They only have to disclose and minimize them. Read that again. One standard requires your interest to come first, always. The other standard just requires disclosure of the conflict. It doesn't require the conflict to disappear. Most Americans have absolutely no idea which type of advisor they're sitting across from, and that single piece of missing information can cost them 6 figures over a lifetime, exactly like it did for Dennis.
Now here's the part that fascinates me, because the system we just described only works because of very specific, predictable human psychology, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The first trap is authority bias. From the time we're kids, we're trained to trust people in positions of expertise without question. Doctors, lawyers, teachers, and yes, financial professionals. When someone is sitting behind a nice desk, wearing a suit with credentials on the wall and a calm, confident voice explaining your financial future to you, your brain instinctively defers. Questioning them feels almost rude, like you're accusing them of something. This is exactly why Dennis never asked the hard question for 12 straight years. It wasn't stupidity, it was a deeply wired social instinct to trust authority figures, especially around topics that feel intimidating and complicated. The second trap is what behavioral economists call the complexity shield. Financial products are deliberately, sometimes intentionally, wrapped in jargon. Expense ratios, surrender charges, basis points, riders, share classes. When something feels too complicated to understand, most people don't push through the confusion and demand clarity. They do the opposite. They disengage and hand the decision entirely to the expert because the alternative feels overwhelming. This is precisely why fee disclosures exist legally but functionally fail in practice. The information is technically available, often buried in a document dozens of pages long, but most clients never read it, and even if they did, the language is built to be skimmed past rather than understood. The third trap is the relationship trap, and this might be the most powerful one of all. Over years of working with the same advisor, a real relationship develops. You see pictures of their kids, they remember your daughter's wedding, they call you on your birthday. This isn't necessarily insincere, but it creates a powerful psychological barrier to ever asking uncomfortable financial questions, because doing so feels like an attack on a personal relationship rather than a normal business inquiry. Nobody wants to accuse a friend of taking advantage of them, even when, financially speaking, that's exactly the conversation that needs to happen. And here's the data that proves how widespread the underlying knowledge gap really is. A 2025 poll by the National Endowment for Financial Education found that 83% of adults believe high school students should be required to take a personal finance course, which is essentially an admission from the public itself that most Americans were never actually taught how any of this works in the first place. We weren't taught to ask, how exactly do you get paid? We were taught to trust the person with the nice office and the firm handshake. That gap in education is precisely what allows the incentive structures we just talked about to operate quietly in the background of millions of Americans' retirement accounts year after year,
often completely unnoticed until it's far too late to recover the lost time and lost compounding.
Okay, so now let's talk about exactly what you do with this information, because the goal here isn't to make you paranoid or anti-advisor. It's to make you an informed client who cannot be taken advantage of. The first move, and this is non-negotiable, is to ask your advisor directly, are you a fee-only fiduciary 100% of the time for 100% of your recommendations? Not, are you a fiduciary? Because some advisors are only fiduciaries for certain parts of your relationship and switch hats for others. You want the full, unambiguous answer. A confident, transparent advisor will answer this instantly and clearly. If you get a vague or defensive answer, that hesitation is information in itself. The second move is to ask the exact question recommended by financial professionals themselves. What is my total cost for the year, and what will I receive in return? Not a percentage buried in a document, an actual dollar figure. If your advisor manages $400,000 for you at a 1.5% fee, that's $6,000 a year. Does that sound reasonable for what you're actually receiving? You can't answer that question if you don't know the number. The third move, especially if you suspect any commission-based products in your portfolio, is to ask point blank, if you earn a commission, how do you ensure your recommendation serves my long-term interests rather than yours? Watch how they answer. A good advisor welcomes this question. The best advisors actually welcome conversations about fees because it lets them demonstrate transparency and professionalism. And that reaction alone tells you a lot about who you're dealing with. The fourth move is simply this: get a second opinion. Even if you've worked with the same advisor for decades, Dennis only found out the truth because he sought out one outside perspective before making a final, irreversible decision. A second opinion costs you an hour of your time. It potentially saves you 6 figures. And the fifth move, if you're starting from scratch or considering switching, is to specifically search for a fee-only, fiduciary, certified financial planner. Those 3 words together are your strongest filter against the exact trap that caught Dennis for 12 years. Now, to be completely fair, and this matters, a McKinsey study from February 2025 found that clients are increasingly willing to pay for personalized human advice, with human-advised relationships actually growing 3 times faster than the population over the past decade. Good advisors exist. Good advisors are valuable. This video isn't telling you to fire your advisor or manage your own retirement with no help. It's telling you to ask the questions Dennis never asked before 12 years go by and a second opinion shows you a number that makes you sick to your stomach. Dennis, by the way, is okay. He switched to the fee-only fiduciary, restructured his portfolio, and is retiring next year. A little later than he originally planned, but with eyes wide open this time. You don't have to learn this lesson the hard way like he did. That's a wrap on today's video. If this opened your eyes even a little bit, hit the like button and share it with someone you know who has a financial advisor and has never actually asked them how they get paid. This could genuinely save them a fortune. Subscribe to Neck Finance if you haven't already, because we've got more videos coming that pull back the curtain on exactly this kind of stuff. Drop a comment below and tell me, do you know exactly how your advisor gets paid? I read every single one. See you in the next one. Stay sharp, stay building.